We are now officially in spring, which in Oklahoma means it is time to talk about storms. Tornado numbers so far for 2025, and really they've all happened this month. We've had 13 tornadoes in the month of March. Putting that into perspective, the average is typically right around 3.8, so we're well above average. Comparing that to last year, we only had 2 tornadoes in March, and then the record high is 17, so we're only 4 off of that. Fingers crossed we don't see any more tornadoes before the month ends, but when we had that record number of 17, that was back in 1991. So talking about tornado season in general and kind of how these ingredients change over the next several months. Well, let's start with March. Right now, our cap that we call it is the weakest. It's basically like a lid on top of maybe boiling spaghetti or something. So if you have that lid on, it's kind of hard for those bubbles to get out. But if you take that lid off, it can start to overflow. Well, it's very weak right now. So when we do have storms that get going, they happen pretty quickly. Now, the moisture is on the lower side, which is why we haven't seen a ton of rainfall so far this March. Instability is also low, and so is that lift. But when you get just enough lift, those winds are very strong. We've been experiencing that, and that's how we still get that rotation, hence tornadoes. And again, we've already experienced that some this March. Then we look ahead towards April. That cap starts to get a little bit stronger, but it's not fully into that moderate category quite yet. But the moderate or category 2 of moisture, we start to get a little bit more moisture. Rain starts to go up with those totals, and stability gets a little bit higher. So does that lift, but it's not quite to the strongest level just yet. But the winds start to back off a little bit more because we're coming out of our windiest season. Then we head into May. That is our kind of biggest season for tornadoes here in Oklahoma. The cap, you can see, does get more into that moderate category, so a little bit stronger. The moisture starts to get higher, but really it's the instability and the lift that is kind of the big fuel that we see our tornadoes. And then once we do start to see those lift and spin, that wind shear is still pretty strong in the month of May, which is why that's usually when we have our most tornadoes and typically our strongest tornadoes. So as you look at tornadoes by month, going for the next few months, you can see we are on that upward climb right now here for March, kind of getting more towards the end of it. Once we get into April, May, and June, those are our busiest seasons here in Oklahoma. Then things do start to finally drop off as you get closer to the summer. But as always, we do have another little uptick that happens in the fall season, like we experienced last year when we had all those tornadoes in November. So it's always good to stay weather aware, but especially as we get closer to the next few months when the likelihood of tornadoes does start to increase.